نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم باب من رفع صوته بالعلم عن عبد الله بن عمرو قال تخلف عنا النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في سفرة سافرناها فأدركنا وقد أرهقنا الصلاة ونحن نتوضأ فجعلنا نمسح على أرجلنا فنادى بأعلى صوته ويل للأعقاب من النار مرتين أو ثلاثا رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي يا رب صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. Respected elders, young brothers, friends, and my brothers and sisters. Alhamdulillah, with the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we offered Salatul Isha with congregation, and at this very moment we are sitting in the house of Allah, in the masjid, in the circle of hadith. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it and make it means of our forgiveness and make it means of coming close to Allah and His beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran instructs the believers in one place, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tarfa'u aswatakum fawqa sawti an-nabiyyi. O believers, do not raise your voice above the voice of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Meaning, when you are in his presence, when you are in his gathering, don't let your voice go above the voice of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Keep your voices low and never speak in a loud tone as you speak to one another to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When this verse was revealed, Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, by Allah, from now on till my last breath, I will never raise my voice before Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rather, I will speak to him as one is whispering to someone. Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he used to speak very low, so low to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a low tone that even Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam on occasions would ask him to repeat what he said. Another companion whose voice naturally was loud, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the verse commanding the believers not to raise their voices over the voice of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this Sahabi began to cry. I mean, he naturally he had a loud voice, but he had a fikr because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warned, if you raise your voice above the voice of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then your amal, your good deeds will become void while you are not aware. In this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanding the believers, when you are in the presence of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, never raise your voice on this occasion. Now, when our Prophet ﷺ was alive, it was not permissible for anyone to raise his voice above his voice. Similarly, after his demise, whosoever goes and visits his grave, then over there, while he is conveying his greeting to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his greeting to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he should not raise his voice there. And also, when the ahadith of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam are being recited in that gathering, it is not permissible for any Muslim, for any believer to raise his voice, because the ahadith of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam are the words of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was alive, and when he used to talk and deliver the talks in the gatherings, the Sahaba Ikram were commanded to keep their voices low. So when our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had gone from this dunya and his ahadith, his words are recited and read in the gathering, the Muslims are commanded to keep their voices low. In another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala narrates and states about Luqman alayhi salam. There is a surah Luqman. Who Luqman alayhi salatu salam was? Luqman, he was a wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was not a prophet. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him choice between wisdom and prophethood, and he chose the wisdom. And someone said to him, how come Allah gave you the choice between two things, wisdom and prophethood, and you chose the wisdom and not the prophethood? He said, had Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala given me the prophethood without my choice, then I would have found the help of Allah. Then Allah would have been sufficient for me. But since Allah left it on my choice, then I thought, no, I will not go, because this office of prophethood, this station of prophethood is too high, and it requires so many responsibilities, so I will not able to bear. So therefore I just left it and I chose the wisdom. Luqman alayhi salatu salam, he was an Ethiopian slave, and on one occasion he was delivering a talk and thousands of people were sitting around him, and one person stood up and said to him, are you the very man who used to graze goats with me? He said, yes, I am the very same person. He said, how come you have gained this rank and this status that all these people are sitting in front of you and you're talking and you're listening to you? He said, there's one report is that he said, number one, I always speak the truth. And number two, I never ever indulge in useless speeches and activities. And there is another report, he said, there are few things. If you observe and if you adopt them, you will also achieve the same rank which I have. And he said, number one, always keep your gaze low. Meaning, when you are walking, you come across a woman, don't look at the woman if she is not your mahram. Lower your voice. And he said, number two, I always speak the truth. And he said, number three, guard your private parts. And he said, number four, always honor your guest. When someone comes to your house as a guest, honor him. Our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a hadith, he said, "Man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir falyukrim dayfahu." He who believes in Allah and hereafter, he should honor his guest. And he said, always protect and look after your neighbor. These are the qualities because of which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me this rank. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states his advice and recommendations he gave to his son. And one of them was, وَغْضُضْ مِنْ صَوْتِكَ إِنَّ أَنْكَرَ الْأَصْوَاتِ لَصَوْتُ الْحَمِيرِ. That, O my beloved son, lower your voice. Indeed, the ugliest of the voices is the voice of donkeys. Always lower your voice. Now, the reason I've explained this is in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands that we should always keep our voices low. The hadith which I have just read before you, Imam Al-Bukhari rahmatullahi trying to prove the point is not on every occasion one should keep his voice low. There are occasions one is allowed and it is permissible for him to raise his voice and speak loud. And then he brings the hadith of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is narrated by Abdullah bin Amr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, which is, he says, once we were in a journey with Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was left behind. Now, in those days when people used to travel through deserts and forests and jungles, and in the darkness of night, sometimes they never would know who has gone ahead and who has left behind. So they say in this journey, our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was left behind, but then later on he joined us. And it was the prayer time, and we had very little water with us, and we were making wudu, and while we were making wudu, our heels they were left dry. Because when a person, sometimes when he makes a rush in something, or especially when he's making wudu and he's making haste, there is a possibility that he may leave some portion of the limbs which are supposed to be washed in the wudu. He may leave some portion dry and the wudu will not be valid. So they said, we had very little water. So Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, save your heels from the hellfire. And he said, woe to those heels which are left dry. Meaning, this person who made a wudu and in the ablution, his heels remain dry, then this person will go into hellfire. So in this hadith, Imam Al-Bukhari rahmatullahi trying to prove the point that on some occasion, although Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, Allah commands us that we should keep our voice is low, but when someone is teaching, when someone is conveying the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to others, then he is allowed to speak in a loud tone. As our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in a loud tone, he said, save your heels from the hellfire. Save your heels from the hellfire. So in a very loud tone he spoke so that everyone can hear him. And sometimes when in order to express the importance of something, when you want to show someone that this is very important, even the person is sitting in front of you, sometimes a person speaks loudly, to make sure that this person understood this thing, and he adopts what I'm trying to say to him. So our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not on this occasion, even when he used to deliver the talk in masjid, the Sahaba Kiram, they say that when our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would give the khutbah, his eyes would become red, his blessed face would become red, and his voice would rise, and he would speak in a very loud tone, as if he is warning us against an army which is coming to attack us. So in this hadith, Imam Bukhari rahmatullah is trying to explain us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran commands us to keep our voices low, but when we teach, when we deliver the talk to people and we teach them about the Quran and Hadith, then we are allowed to raise our voice. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept this majlis and make it means of our forgiveness. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina wa Maulana Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa sallim. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.